But let's just talk about worldview issues in terms of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter! And it's amazing when you hear that being shouted in the streets, the average Christian seeing the flames and the cocktails being thrown, hears Black Lives Matter and goes, yeah, I like that. Because I think they do. Because I have a worldview that makes sense about that claim, Black Lives Mattering. I like that. Makes sense in the biblical worldview. I don't know why they're saying it, and maybe they're saying it in a different way than I would mean it because of their worldview. And it actually is the case. Many of you guys are aware of the fact. Just go to the official website of Black Lives Matter. They confess and rejoice over the fact that they are trained Marxists. Trained Marxists talking about Black Lives Matter. Now, if you know the history of Marxism and you hear them talking about anything, you should be a little squinty-eyed. Trained Marxists, they rejoice in this, that they are not just Marxists, but trained Marxists. It makes sense as to why we're seeing what we're seeing, by the way. If you know the history of Marxism, you say, okay, now I'm starting to understand a little bit better. You see, trained Marxists understand that they bring about their revolution. And by the way, revolution for the Marxist isn't getting back to the foundation, something that is true or objectively true, getting back to that point, as many early on in the war for independence would have said, there's truth out there, there's justice out there, we need to get back to that foundation. Revolutionaries in the Marxist sense are trying to get away from the foundation, objective truth. They're trying to create disorder. And so, of course, trained Marxists in history have all been all about class conflict. Class conflict. Now, if you know the history of Marxism, you'll know that as they tried to get it into America early on, they did what they did before, and they tried to have it the rich versus the poor. The rich versus the poor. One problem, though, in a capitalistic society that's benefited from the Christian worldview, when you have people that are benefiting from the free market and private property, and they're actually able to eat, it's hard to pit rich versus poor, so it didn't work out so well, so more class conflict is instituted. So what do we have in American history? Well, the Marxists get here and they say, let's create class conflict, rich versus poor. All right, let's also create the class conflict, gay versus straight. You know, by the way, that they've stated this plainly in their materials. You can read it. Read Saul Alinsky and all the rest. You'll see that this has been planned for the longest time. What you're seeing is the result of labor and work and consistency with their worldview, and shame on us for not fighting back sooner. Amen. Why is it they don't even know Jesus? They believe that all they are is matter and motion, and they're willing to die for what they believe. What are we doing? What are we doing? Shame on us. But they believe in a worldview called dialectical materialism. I cannot even begin to unpack this absurdity before you today. But they believe in dialectical materialism. What you need to understand at the bottom of this is their worldview claims the claims of essentially evolution. Matter in motion. Dialectical materialism for the trained Marxist in Black Lives Matter is they believe in a materialist view of reality. It's matter in motion. It's stuff moving around. No God, no purpose, no order. You are matter. That's their position. And in terms of the dialectical part, don't get lost on this. I know all this is stupid. Don't get lost in this. But I know in terms of the dialectical, we say, what does that mean? I'm going to read to you Engels, a quote from Engels, so you get an idea. And I want you to consider the answer the fool according to their folly. They say, we need to do this. These lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. No justice, no peace. Well, that's interesting for matter in motion to be making claims like that. Engels said, quote, for dialectical philosophy, nothing is final, absolute, sacred. I'm going to give you just 5 seconds to think about that. Do you hear it? Answer the fool according to their folly. Engels says about dialectical philosophy, nothing is final, absolute, or sacred. Is that absolutely true? Is that final? But notice the sacred part. Nothing is final, nothing is absolute, nothing is sacred. For dialectical materialists, there are no absolutes, and nothing is sacred. So, let's test it. Black Lives Matter? Nothing is final, nothing is absolute, nothing is sacred. We're trained Marxists. Black Lives Matter. No, they don't. Not according to your position. Not according to a position that says nothing is final, nothing is absolute, nothing is sacred. Also, bigger question here we need to ask the Black Lives Matter crowd. Why does matter matter? Why does matter matter? You see, where's the borrowed capital here? We can say to the Black Lives Matter Marxist, you're not supposed to believe that that black man's in the image of God. You're not supposed to believe that he has value and purpose and that black people are sacred. That's my worldview. I get to say that black people are sacred. I get to say that they're valuable because I have Christ. You have matter in motion, dialectical materialism. Matter doesn't matter in your worldview. It's borrowed capital. No creator-creation distinction in dialectical materialism. Humans are cosmic accidents. And what happens in this indifferent universe to people with black skin is irrelevant in their worldview and their perspective. What are they doing? They're sneaking over that foot, borrowing from Jesus in order to make coherent claims about their worldview, but they can't make it coherent. Here's the claim: anything mattering is mine. Why? Because I have Jesus. I have a foundation to make sense of a world where I can say anything matters at all, or that human beings are valuable at all. You see, in my worldview, and this has been said before, but please hear it, there is one creator, God, one race, human, one blood, red, one problem, sin, and one solution, Jesus Christ. And I think a potent question to ask the Black Lives Matter Marxist: all Black Lives matter? All Black Lives matter? What about those black lives in the womb? The most unsafe place for black lives isn't the back of a police cruiser. It isn't even in Chicago. The most unsafe place for black lives is in the wombs of black mothers. Is that the truth? Yes. Then you need to say it like the prophets say it and do what the prophets do. We need to be heralding the truth of the biblical worldview in the midst of this conversation, and we need to stop pulling punches. Tell the truth.